Hey mama, how are you doing? So, if you've ever had the sneaking suspicion that your life feels harder than it should be, and you can't tell whether that means you're failing, dramatic, lazy, too much, or just deeply misunderstood, this episode is for you. This is not, by any means of imagination, this is not a diagnosis episode. This is a story episode, a pattern recognition episode. We talked about that. And here's what actually happened when my life got too loud to keep pretending episode. We're going to talk about all of that and get into it and so much more. And by the end of this episode, you'll understand how my late self-recognition unfolded, what clues were there all along, like all my life, and why motherhood cracked open questions I had never really allowed myself to ask. All right, so let's get into it. Before any of this clicked, I looked functional enough from the outside. I was good at school. I was very good at school. I was structured. I loved rules. Even though I would just say I just liked them, but I liked knowing what was expected of me. I liked achievement, the high marks, high accolades. I liked being able to point to something and say, see, I did that right there. I was identity-based in being the straight A student, the athletic one, the capable one. I wasn't necessarily the cool one. I wasn't exactly in the in crowd. I was adjacent to it. Close enough to see it, but not actually in it. And I always felt that gap. I really wanted to be. And I knew how to perform good. I knew how to meet expectations. I knew how to earn praise in certain systems. And I also had friction, confusion, intensity, sensitivity, strong internal logic, strong reactions, and a lot of private shame. So no, I did not think maybe I'm autistic. I thought I was just being difficult. I was complicated, sensitive, hard on myself. A lot. Maybe just too much. Now, when I look back now, the signs were not absent. They were just scattered, and none of them by themselves felt like enough to make any grand conclusion by any stretch of the imagination. But together, they started sounding like a pattern. And more specifically, they started sounding like a pattern my husband had already noticed and was reflecting back to me before I was ready to see it in myself for myself. And that matters because I did not become a mother in a vacuum. I am not an asexual creature from biology. I am a woman with a marriage, a family who chose intimacy, partnership, and motherhood with another human being and some more little human beings. And if it were not for my husband, his literal presence in my life, his observations, his closest to me, his role in my becoming a mother, this whole thing may have stayed buried a lot longer. So when I say motherhood cracked it open, I also mean partnership put a mirror in front of me I could not avoid forever. Now let me tell you what the scattered signs looked like. For sure, sensory stuff was a big one. Wet food, dishwater, food textures in general, food touching other food, certain smells, certain sounds, certain kinds of touch. It was not just one sensory quirk. It was a whole sensory landscape. Socially, I could connect deeply, but not smoothly. I could get very close to certain people, but I often felt like I was studying connection more than naturally flowing inside of it. I would watch TV shows to try to figure it out. And even in my childhood, I remember specific friendships so vividly. I remember the feeling of certain girls, how close we were, how particular they were in my world. I remember competing with them. I remember another one who was like a dog, perfect, her style, her vernacular, her grace, her social structure. And I remember a rougher around the edges little friend I was also deeply attached to. I remember my best friend that I had in high school was a guy, and everyone kept assuming we were dating, and I genuinely thought that people were being incredibly ridiculous for just assuming that because we spent so much time together, we would be dating. Now, with hindsight, I get why people assumed it. Back then, I was like, y'all are dumb. That kind of thing happened a lot. People would interpret something socially, and I would be like, that is not what this is. Like, why are you all adding this weird meaning? And then later, I'd realize, okay, I can see why people read it that way. 10 years later. Cute. Love that for me. Work-wise, I usually disdained my job, not because I didn't know how to work, not because I didn't care or couldn't follow instructions, but because certain environments were draining. I hated talking on the phone, still-ish do. And if you want me to avoid something with my whole chest, make it a phone call. Text me, email me. If you want to reach me, carrier pigeon me before you make me call. And I remember being in a work study job and just feeling like I could not do it. Like my whole body was revolting before my words could catch up. And other people were trying to figure out what was wrong. And in my mind, I'm like, no, this job is what's wrong. This is draining and terrible. And I'm responding normally to something that sucks. I would be reading at the cash register when I was supposed to just stand there and wait for customers in another job. And that got me in trouble. And in my mind, I was like, why would you just assume I'm going to stand here available for randomness, quite frankly, rude people because they're in a certain tax bracket for 8 hours a day and be fine with it? But marriage, y'all, that brought out another layer. In the beginning, I still thought like a single person. I still operated like one. There were ways my husband needed acknowledgement, reassurance, emotional context, things that, to me, either felt unnecessary, silly, or dramatic. And I hated admitting that to him, even now, but it's true. I was like, you're a grown man. Why do I have to say all this out loud? Why do I have to babysit your feelings? Only later did I realize that I wasn't seeing what was actually happening, that I was causing rejection. I was causing misunderstanding. I was being dismissive because I did not understand the nervous system function of what he was asking for. And because I didn't understand it, I labeled it as weakness, as drama in a man. Like, that's hurtful now. And it's not fun to realize that about yourself as a wife. Then there was the logic and fairness piece. When I felt like something is right, I don't just think it, I feel it in my entire body. The feeling started showing up clearly in school. Chemistry, business calc, statistics. I could feel when the answer was right. Like the literal answer. Not magically, just physiologically. There was a bodily sense of alignment, a homeostasis, an equilibrium. When something was wrong, I could feel that too. That same embodied rightness spilled into ethics, arguments, fairness, politics, social issues, logic, people being sloppy with the truth. So something felt unfair, illogical, cruel, dismissive, lazy. Like my whole body was reacting. Which explains why I can go overboard defending people or communities, even if I'm not personally part of that category. Because once my fairness wiring gets lit up, I feel it. Again, one clue by itself, random. All of them together, a pattern. So, motherhood did not cause said patterns. Motherhood exposed it. Motherhood amplified it. Motherhood took whatever had been manageable, hidden, compensated for, masked, white-knuckled, and said, okay, but can you do all of that while sleep-deprived, overstimulated, touched out, constantly interrupted, emotionally responsible for 10 people, and still expected to be soft and organized and grateful and available? And the answer for me was not in the way I'd been trying to. Noise got louder, touch got heavier, mess got more threatening, transitions became harder, routines got harder to maintain, burnout happened faster. And this is where the really ugly thoughts showed up. The thoughts I know other mothers have and are terrified to say out loud. The I need to leave. The I regret every decision that has led me here. The maybe everybody will be better off without me around. The I want to scorch the earth and disappear. Not because I didn't love my family, but because my nervous system was overwhelmed and my brain was pitching escape routes. I kept trying to fix it with systems, planners, templates. Can you feel me? Reworking routines from scratch, buying office supplies, rebuilding things in Canva, trying again, trying harder, and nothing felt like enough. Motherhood didn't make me neurodivergent. It made it impossible to ignore the cost of the way I had been coping. This part matters because I want to tell the truth about how this actually unfolded. And maybe you can resonate. I did not nobly sit down one day and decide to embark on a beautiful self-discovery journey. No. My husband noticed things repeatedly, especially in postpartum, and it annoyed the living daylights out of me. He would point out patterns and I would feel exposed. I would feel irritated. I would feel misunderstood. I would feel like he was reading me in a way I hadn't agreed to. Then I remembered this piece of content I had seen or heard or he had shared with me. Two women talking about how girls and women with autism, masking, camouflaging, the way it gets missed in females, all of that. And it had lodged itself somewhere in my mind and back in my head. So when my husband kept reflecting things back to me, I did what any very chill and emotionally neutral person would do. I went to look up things so I could come back with a rebuttal, with a strong comeback. That is the honest truth. I wasn't looking for self-understanding at first. I was looking for a comeback. And that line still cracks me up a little because it is so me. So I go down the rabbit hole. I start taking tests, reading, comparing, watching, scrolling, researching. And the thing that shocked me was not just that I related to a few things, it was that I kept getting the same answer. Not barely crossing a threshold, not maybe, not could go either way. Repeatedly across multiple tests, 10, across multiple frameworks. And that startled me because it stopped feeling like random internet nonsense. It started feeling like one weird quiz. It stopped feeling dismissible. One of the resources I used was Embrace Autism, which was especially meaningful to me because it was created by a woman who came to this understanding later in her life too. After she had already lived a lot of her adult life, built expertise, become a doctor, done all the real adult things. That mattered to me very deeply because it softened the myth that if this were true, somebody obviously would have caught it when I was younger, when I was little. No, not necessarily, especially not if you're verbal, especially not if you're high masking, especially not if you're a girl, then a woman, then a wife, then a mother, all while performing good and trying to keep up. So the emotional angle here was not triumph. It was more, wait, are you serious right now? Like, is this what I have been fighting this entire time? I couldn't keep calling it coincidences. We're a household who believes in synchronicities. But once the answer kept finding me, I started to listen. Late self-recognition is not just relief. It is grief too. Mourning. It's relief because suddenly there is language. Relief because maybe I'm not broken. Relief because maybe there's reasons things felt so much harder than they seemed to be for other people. But grief too. Grief and space for mourning for how hard I was on myself. Grief for how many years I spent moralizing my nervous system. Grief for the jobs that drained me, the relationships I misunderstood, the routines I kept failing to maintain, the shame I wrapped around things that may have never been character flaws in the first place. And yes, mourning, grief for the failure resume I accumulated this entire time, because I do have one, a real one, a long one, a fail forward resume. Projects, ideas, startups, identities, attempts, systems, paths, pivots, hopes, dead ends, things I tried to build, things I tried to sustain, things I couldn't hold. And before this self-recognition, that failure resume looked like proof. Proof that I was inconsistent, proof that I lacked discipline, proof that I was flaky, proof that I ruined things. And afterward, I started to see something else. Maybe that resume wasn't proof of failure. Maybe it was a trail of mismatched systems, burnout cycles, nervous system overload, and a woman trying desperately to build a life without yet understanding the brain she was building it with. Self-recognition did not solve my life, but it changed the story I was telling about why life felt so hard. Once I saw the pattern, things started changing. Not all at once, like I'd like, not magically, but meaningfully that I can remember. And I stopped moralizing my overwhelm. I started honoring sensory needs instead of treating them like personal weaknesses. I started understanding that motherhood, marriage, and work were not just because life is hard, but hard in specific ways that connected to how my brain and my body process input. I became more willing to ask what actually helps here, what drains me, what keeps repeating, and what would support make this easier. I started communicating earlier, still working on it, repairing faster, designing smaller, accommodating more, judging less, and most importantly, once I saw the pattern, I stopped trying to discipline myself into being someone else. There were a few myths I had absorbed without even realizing it. Like, if I were autistic, someone would have caught it. If I were autistic, I wouldn't be this verbal. If I were autistic, I wouldn't be this self-aware. If I were autistic, I wouldn't be empathetic. If I were autistic, I wouldn't be married. If I were autistic, I wouldn't be a mother. If I were autistic, I wouldn't look like me. And underneath all of that was the ugliest one. I'm probably just bad at coping. That one did damage because bad at coping sounds like a personal failure. Pattern recognition sounds like possibility. So, if you are listening and something in this episode is tugging at you, here's what I want to say. You do not need certainty to start being kinder to yourself, mama. You do not need a formal diagnosis to start noticing what helps. You do not need all the answers to stop bullying yourself with the wrong story. Like you wouldn't treat friends that way. Learn like a scientist, not a judge. That means track patterns, notice what drains you, notice what helps, notice what keeps repeating, notice where you feel safest, notice where you shut down, notice where you overperform, and then crash. And if you like structured ways to do that, I would really recommend this book called Designing Your Life by Bill Burnett and Dave Evans. There's a practical energy tracking process in that world, especially when paired with the workbook they have. You can find it on Amazon. It can help you observe your actual life experience instead of judging yourself from above. Let curiosity be enough for now. Let self-respect begin before certainty. And for the next 3 days, notice one thing your brain struggles with and one thing your brain is brilliant at. That's it. And if you want to share, you can DM me over on Instagram or Facebook. Or honestly, if you happen to have my personal number, text me, call me, send me a voice note. I would genuinely love to hear from you. That feels more real to me anyway. And I'm open to expanding my network in ways that feel, healthy, sustainable, and human. I want more real people in my life. I want more honest exchange. I want more of a giant melting pot of characters and stories, minds, and souls. So if this episode landed somewhere in you, reach out. And if you think you want to share, and if there's one thing I want to share with this, I used to call a flaw, but now I think it might be a pattern. Please tell me. I would love to hear it. I really wish someone would have told me sooner that self-understanding does not make you weak. I wish someone had told me sooner that needing support does not mean you are less of an adult or capable of being an adult. And I wish someone had told me sooner that a brain can be brilliant and burdened in the same sentence. I wish someone would have told me sooner that not fitting the default settings does not mean you were built wrong. And I really wish someone had told me sooner you do not have to wait until your life is on fire to start listening to yourself. You are not lazy. You are not too much, and you are not failing at life. Sometimes you're just trying to run a different operating system in a world that never handed you the manual or the keys. Again, if this episode meant something to you, follow the show, rate the show, send the show to someone who needs it, especially another mama. And again, if you want to reach out, DM me over on Instagram or Facebook, or if you happen to have my number, text me, call me, send a voice note. I'd love that. You don't need all the answers to start treating yourself with more truth, mama. And I'll talk to you next time.